They just caught those guys. So, the dining room seemed an altogether different place now. The rain had let up, the drafts were gone, and bright sunlight streamed through the window, yet the mood in the room was dark. On the table, the children's breakfast lay just as they had left it. Only an hour had passed since Renee asked Milligan for tea and honey, but the teapot and honey jar might well have been props in a play. So unreal and insignificant did they seem now. Everyone sat at the table except Constance, who was sitting on the floor. The men in the maze had given Constance quite a shock, an actual shock, delivered by the way of wires that flicked like snakes' tongues from their watches, she'd said. And she remained somewhat addled. Her wispy blonde hair stuck out in all directions like a small child's drawing of a sun, and her eyes seemed to roam about independently of each other. Moments before, she had walked in a circle around her chair, attempting without success to sit in it, then dropped to her bottom on the floor, where she said she believed she would sit for the time being. Mr. Benedict was watching her with concern. "Are you sure she's all right, Rhonda? You examined her carefully?" Rhonda nodded. "She'll feel better soon." "Okay, who were those men?" Kate blurted out. "Professional kidnappers," Mr. Benedict said. "Crafty fellows who work for the Sender. You'll recall, he uses children to send his messages." "So he captures them," Kate said. "He has subtler methods too, but some children, yes, he captures. His scouts have an uncanny nose for vulnerable children. Don't worry, they've been deposited far from here and will be unconscious for quite some time thanks to Milligan." Number 2 clucked her tongue. If only Constance hadn't gone into the maze. "Constance, why on earth did you decide to go down there anyway?" "I didn't decide to," Constance snapped. "I was trying to go down to the landing like Mr. Benedict told us to." The boys looked at Kate, who acknowledged with a shrug that she'd been wrong. "But I tiptoed down one flight of steps too many, and I heard someone behind me, so I went deeper into the maze to get away. But they found me," she said with a shiver. "They definitely found me." Number 2 patted her shoulder. "Don't worry, Connie, you're safe now." "Don't call me Connie," she said crossly. She rose unsteadily from the floor and made another attempt at the chair. This time she managed to climb into it. "I'm glad you're feeling better, Constance," said Mr. Benedict. "But won't those men come back?" Renee asked. "It's possible," Mr. Benedict said, "which is why we must work quickly. As it is, I'm hoping we can avoid detection long enough to launch our investigation." "And if we can't," said Constance, as if she'd rather expected failure. "If we can't, child, all is lost," Mr. Benedict cried. Instantly, he looked regretful. In a softer tone, he said, "I'm sorry to raise my voice. Failure in this instance is an unsettling prospect. Now please, let me explain. These men intended to take you to a school called Learning Institute for the Very Enlightened." "I've heard of that place," Renee said. "Some kids from the orphanage wanted to go there, but Mr. Ruger said it was against policy and would not allow it." Doubtless it was, at least against his policy. Aside from being the orphanage director, Mr. Ruger is headmaster of your academy, is he not? "I believe he gets paid per student." "Even those with special tutors?" asked Renee. Mr. Benedict gave him a significant look. Renee was indigent. "So that's why he wouldn't send me to an advanced school. He wanted me on the academy's rolls just out of greed?" "It's possible. He thought it was in your best interest," Mr. Benedict said. "Greed often helps people think of reasons they might not discover on their own. At any rate, it was in your best interest not to go. The Institute will admit any child, but it is particularly fond of orphans and runaways. In fact, as you can see, such children are sometimes taken to the Institute whether they wish to go or not." "The hidden messages are coming from the Institute, aren't they?" Renee said. "I believe the school was created for that very purpose," said Mr. Benedict. "Every so often, the Sender must have new children, and the Institute receives a steady stream." "I can't believe the Sender gets away with it," Sticky said. "He's very cunning, Sticky. The Institute is a highly secretive, well-guarded facility. Not the usual thing for a school, you know. Yet it enjoys a wonderful reputation. The hidden messages have convinced everyone of the Institute's great virtue. There's an often repeated phrase in the hidden messages, Rhonda explained. Dare not defy the Institute. Obviously, it's kind of a defense mechanism. Thus, the Institute has completely escaped regulation, Mr. Benedict said. It operates according to its own rules, without any interference. That's outrageous, Kate exclaimed. I can't believe no one goes looking for those kids. I'm afraid runaways and orphans vanish even more easily than government agents do, said Mr. Benedict. Lest you forget, the missing aren't missing. They're only departed. The children looked at one another, appalled. I'm glad Milligan was here to protect us, Sticky said with a shudder. That institute is the last place I'd want to be. At this, Mr. Benedict looked somewhat uncomfortable. He cleared his throat. Yes, well, the scouts won't carry you to the institute against your will, it's true. But to the institute you must certainly go. You are my secret agents. Codes and histories. It took Kate Weatherall about 3 seconds to embrace her new role as a secret agent. While the other children gaped and blinked and pinched themselves to be sure they weren't dreaming, actually Constance pinched Sticky, who yelped and pinched her back. In short, while the other children were adjusting to the news, Kate was prepping Mr. Benedict with questions. What was their mission to be? Would they need code names? Was it possible to use somewhat longish code name? Mr. Benedict waited until they'd all calmed down. Then he explained their mission. How they were to be admitted to the Institute the following day, how he would draw up all the necessary papers, and how, much to Kate's disappointment, they would not be required to use code names. They must be themselves, Mr. Benedict said. They would have secrets enough to keep. What are we to do exactly? Sticky asked. Exactly what they want you to do, said Mr. Benedict. Learn. You must be excellent students. One of the few things we know about the Institute is that certain privileges are granted only to the top students. No doubt it is these children the sender uses to send his hidden messages. So you're hoping we'll gain some secret knowledge, Renee said. Indeed. How the sender's messages accomplish such profound effects, what the particulars of his plan are, anything you uncover may help us find a way to defeat him. So that's it, Sticky said. You just want us to be students? Much more than that, Mr. Benedict said. For not only must you learn what they teach, you must also try and learn what they do not teach. Every odd detail, every suspicious aspect of the Institute, any unusual elements at all, you must report to me. You never know what curious tidbit might hold the key to the sender's entire plan. Anything you notice may be of use. Kate was rubbing her hands together. So you want us to sneak around and maybe break into some offices? And Mr. Benedict shook his head. Absolutely not. Kate stopped rubbing her hands. No? You must find out all you can, said Mr. Benedict sternly, and you must report it to me. You must take no unnecessary risks. Your mission is dangerous enough. Kate looked crestfallen. The other children looked relieved. Now Mr. Benedict went on. We must communicate often and in secret. For this, we'll use Morse code. All right, we'll stop right there. For this, we'll use Morse code. Boom. Like and subscribe.